Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Morgan Wheeler. I am the Director of Sales here at Cities Digital, and today we're going to talk a little bit about using workflow with contract management. We appreciate your attendance this morning. We know you've got a lot of options. Everybody's hosting a webinar in the morning these days, and you've chosen to be with us, and that in and of itself is a compliment. So again, I am the guy on the screen, and I thank you for being with us. Today's agenda, of course, is fairly simple. We're going to discuss workflow as it applies to contract management. We'll discuss a few different planning considerations to have in mind and to brainstorm before you begin the design process, some of the workflow tools that are available to you to design that workflow, configuration-specific details about Laserfiche itself, and then we will show a demonstration of a workflow that I built. Just a quick poll, if for all that are in the room today, it's always nice to get a little feedback and interact with you before we dive into the specifics of software. If you are currently a user of any kind of workflow tools or you use a Laserfiche workflow module, would you kindly hit yes? And if you're not using it yet, then the option would be no. So I've got a few of the responses rolling in here. It's about 91% of the rooms voted, and it is exactly 50-50. An interesting result, but not too uncommon. And for all those that are joining us today, that's the purpose of these particular webinars, is to help you use the tools that you already have, or maybe that you're looking at better. That's part of our ongoing promise to you, and one of the great things of the manufacturer-reseller arrangement in Laserfiche. So I'm going to go ahead and close our poll. It's at 55% no, 45% yes right now. And so some of the things to consider when we're approaching a workflow, and so many times as a consultant, I find myself in a conversation where a client knows they want automation, but isn't quite sure what to tell me in terms of how that breaks down, and that's sometimes a bit of a waste of their time. And a simple outline and some food for thought before you get into kind of the basic question, get past the basic questions and get into more of the advanced services that my firm is the best at providing you. Here's a couple of the things to think about, and this is general in terms of all workflow tools. But when we're talking about automation, we want to think about what does the end result look like? What does that folder structure look like? Is it date-based? Is it use the name of our clients? Does it use the name of our vendors? Does it have a records management codification in it? Who can see it? That starting with the end in mind, I think, is kind of one of the greatest and most valuable colloquialisms in enterprise software management. Is don't give up any of your ideals. Create a model for what you want this to look like, how you and your team want this to look, and plot the path from here to there. Templates, of course, are another big one, and all they are is a collection of information on your document, key data, often used to automatically name your documents, and also, of course, critical in terms of retrieving search. Even though Laserfiche provides full-text searchability across all of our documents, the metadata, especially when those repositories start to get large, becomes a key to efficiency. Now, when we talk about workflow, that's the steps. Who sees this? Who grabs this document? Who scans it? Who was putting it on someone else's desk before we automated it? And then who needs to know about that document going through its various steps? And of course, anyone who needs to know and then approve. And connectivity. Now these are two of my favorites. Connectivity is a critical part of workflow these days, because most folks will approach workflow thinking that the workflow exists just within the Laserfiche realm, and that's not at all the case. The Laserfiche workflow tool can reach outside of the Laserfiche suite and talk to your CRM, your finance applications, an Excel spreadsheet, a Word document, all sorts of databases, E-signature tools are a very popular one, e-forms, and of course the coup de grace other applications APIs for a full-fledged quote-unquote integration. But one of the greatest things I think about the workflow tool is it is one part automation and the other half an integration tool. And then the other often kind of overseen element and question that can sometimes cause some blank stares in the room is what starts this workflow? Is it user-driven or automatic? That's usually how these two things break down. Do we want workflow to watch for certain things and conduct certain activities automatically, or do we want the user to be able to see a document, put it in Laserfiche, and for instance, hit a button and start a workflow? Kind of a nuanced difference there, but they can, one allows someone a human intervention, although quick and easy and error-free. The other is completely automated, and various regulatory realities and our own personal preferences will define those starting rules. So just take a look at a little example here. This is something similar to what we'll see in our demonstration today. Most folks these days are using the general drop folder approach. This approach is so simple that it's somewhat unavoidable. The idea being put everything here and answer a couple of basic questions about the document. The least amount of questions the better, and the most automated the better. And then move that into some sort of auto-filing routine. Create a nice automated contract folder for us, maybe by vendor and then by year, and auto-sort those contracts that have already been expired. Something intuitive and easy and albeit and appropriately selfish for your team. This software stuff should be doing exactly what you want it to. And Laserfiche is just moving around the name of the vendor and a year here and maybe a designation on the template field to create the template, or excuse me, the folder structure that you want. And I keep mentioning template because templates are the collection of that data that enables that automation. How did Laserfiche know how to create the Dell folder? Because Dell was in the vendor name on the template. How did they know what folder to put in that file in? Because that was designated as the contract name and contract type. How do they know when to create the right subfolder year, as well as all the notifications, especially the one that goes out 3 months before this contract ends? Well, that's simply collecting the contract start date and then having workflow calculate a nice little 3-year timeline off of that initial date-based selection. All simple things that when added together really help an organization manage dozens, maybe if not hundreds of contracts, all coming in from different and crazy locations. That's the missed element that sometimes the fly in the ointment is. Automation is easy if everything's coming from one location. That's not always organically possible, but Laserfiche allows us to have this broad, put it all here, answer some basic questions, and workflow will do the rest, whether it's an email or something that came in on a thumb drive or off of a scanner, you name it. Now, when we talk about steps, sometimes when I initially ask my clients to detail the steps of a particular document's workflow, that can be kind of daunting, and it shouldn't be. You know the answer to that question already. It is just a matter of steps. And so, for instance, if you were to write out a contract management workflow, at least in writing, not necessarily flowchart design, it could be something as simple as, I want this thing to file my contracts, I want this to name my contracts, I want it to calculate an expiration and review date, and I want it to automatically send out notifications based on that review date. That's all my team, for instance, would need to build the workflow that you're about to see. So this is not very complicated, but you know, it never hurts to have a nice partner saying that to you all the way along in anything in life. Now, connectivity has a lot of different shades, and I underscore this adamantly because as a solutions consultant, I really my first and foremost solution is to go find something in a database or somewhere on someone's network so that a user doesn't have to put it in anymore. That eliminates any of that user-driven error and allows me to grab data real time and move that information around, metadata specifically. But this is often forgotten, or perhaps people don't think outside their department. If you're in Oh, let's say you're in a city, for instance, you're in planning, you might not think about the list of vendors over in the finance department's finance application, but I encourage you to, because without offending them in any kind of way, I can go connect to their database and get a whole list of all the vendors that the city ever deals with and sync that to your system so you never have to update it. And I've grouped together the three main approaches in workflow here that substantiate the off-the-shelf connectivity with your other applications. Because as I mentioned, workflow is as much an automation tool as it is an integration tool. And so the first set here is the enterprise integration tools, and that'll, as you see, will push to iCalendar streams or calendar streams that are picked up and moved to all sorts of calendar tools, including Outlook and Google. Can push and pull from other databases, web sources. There's the push query to an ODBC compliant database, update information, update a Word document, Excel documents. So think about all those different things, a website, a traditional SQL database on your network, Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, all of the items that are where you store your data. Go grab that with a workflow. Workflow has these pre-built activities that'll go query that all in and at least present it to your users as a nice little list rather than having your folks have to type in anything. That's always our goal, eliminate the manual entry. You'll also see here in this second set that we have the ability to interact with Exchange, not only at the email but the calendar level. Write metadata, you'll see that here in writing contract expiration date, interacting with e-forms tools, SharePoint, you name it. And then Cities Digital is also always creating new integrations and connectivity. Here's two examples of our custom Laserfiche workflow activities for the whole Dynamics suite. So those are available from Cities Digital anytime that deepen your document management to CRM or to Dynamics connectivity. We also have them for Salesforce and DocuSign and others. And so when I say workflow is as much an automation tool as it is an integration tool, and that connectivity cannot be understated when you're planning out workflows, I mean it. Now, starting rules, of course, fall across basically two categories. Automated, and you'll see an example of a Laserfiche starting rule here, or user-driven, and that's usually through starting what's called a business process. We're going to see the latter here. We're going to see a user select a document and start the contract notification workflow. But just as easily, I could drag and drop a document into the system and automatically have the following actions happen to it. Whenever a new document is created, referred to in Laserfiche Ease as an entry, run the contract management workflow on it. If it is a new document, it has the contracts template applied, and it's coming in a certain location. And of course that the user doing all this is not the workflow tool itself. That's a simple start rule that from a drag and drop will automate what we're about to see manually. But I get to show you the business process tool here in addition, so a little extra feature set. And it gives us a moment for pause and conversation. A couple of the items here that should not be understated as well that we're going to use in processing contracts is pattern matching. That uses regular expressions or patterns in a document to identify account numbers, social security numbers, vendor names, you name it. We'll use a date token calculator to grab the current date and calculate various notification queues or activities off of it. We'll assign field values that, of course, will tell us what that contract expiration date is so the user can see it at any time throughout the year, not just waiting for an email to come along. We'll also, of course, retrieve a couple of field values or ask questions of the user, use the standard routing tools to rename or appropriately name, move, and wait for user entry. We'll search the repository for any additional documentation or metadata that needs to be added to that type of document. And then within, of course, if we wanted to drag and drop multiple documents into such a queue, the run for each entry command would run that specific workflow on each and every document. So you can rest assured that if you take the month's worth of contracts and drag and drop them all into Laserfiche at once, for instance, the workflow will run on each individually and separate them out by vendor. Email notifications go out at any point throughout this process as well. Not to mention the city's digital custom Laserfiche workflow activities. We won't see those today, but those are the context for many of our other webinars. The CRM activities, such as those for Dynamics and Salesforce, allow us to do everything, including create records in the CRM. The DocuSign activities allow us to pull from the DocuSign forms, push to DocuSign templates and others, allowing for impressive and deep connectivity between your digital signature and your document management system, or your CRM or your finance application and your document management system. And of course, Laserfiche can talk to a number of other items just through the regular off-the-shelf workflow activities. So today what we'll see here is we'll see a document that's a contract. I'll have it in Microsoft Word. It'll drop into Laserfiche. A user will see that, and they'll initiate the contract management review process. Just a little look here at the workflow tool and what it does. It's getting a little technical, and this of course will be fun to look at when the recording of this particular webinar is sent back out to you. No need to scribble down the token values here, but what we will see happen is we'll ask the user a couple of questions. We'll use that information to properly format a date, which is then used in notifications and sending out automated emails. The contract expiration date will be calculated automatically, and actually, as you see here, this is a fairly simple workflow. And then the contract management review that would follow would, of course, run on usually a cyclical basis, maybe weekly or nightly, and look for each contract that has met its review date and send out notifications based on anything that was coming up for review. So instead of being on the defense and all of a sudden here on December 15th we have a contract expiring and maybe we just rush to renew it rather than review it, we get any manner of notifications 3 to 1 month before, and then maybe a little more actively leading up to that actual expiration date until we tell Laserfiche we've reviewed it. Of course, email notifications can go out at any point, not just with simple information, with actual attachments, links, custom email recipients based on the workflow or document type itself, custom subjects, and very detailed instructions and information in those emails, as well as notification on the iPhone, Android, and Microsoft mobile apps. And scheduling that workflow, it can be another way to kickstart workflows. This, of course, would fall under the automated workflow category, where we would just have the contract notification workflow run every day at 7 a.m. perhaps. So when people come in at 7:30, 8:30, the contract notifications for that day are waiting them. So let's take a look at our demonstration now. And so here in my Laserfiche demonstration VM, we'll show just saving what we have as a Word document into Laserfiche as a contract. I often ignore this heavily used method of storing things to Laserfiche, and I shouldn't. I'm often dragging and dropping documents off the desktop or scanning, saving an email attachment. However, all of those items apply to how we're going to currently save this contract that I've just crafted and received perhaps back signed from one of my clients. It's for Oak Tree Advisory. We do a lot of business with financial firms as well as city and county government. So I chose kind of a benign example. This is not an active client. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the regular Laserfiche integration with Microsoft Office. Here this happens to be the Microsoft Word iteration. I'm going to save this new document to Laserfiche, and of course you'll see Laserfiche pop up here as one of the various storage locations that you'd have available. And I can store this document straight into my Laserfiche repository. Just have a little bit of a delay on my web connection here. And that's going to take me right to the appropriate location in the repository. In this case, I actually want the incoming documents folder. I was storing DocuSign documents, which are also attached to this contract management workflow, and we'll see where here in just a second. But I'm able to choose a basic Windows, from a basic Windows, saving dialog. I can choose the Laserfiche location. So even though this looks like we're storing to Windows, you'll notice this is into Laserfiche. I'm going to save that into the Laserfiche repository, and here are my metadata fields. Now, I've expanded this, and I'll talk a lot through this, but in about 3, 2, 1, now your folks will already have jammed right through the application of this template information. So even though I'll use this as a moment to soapbox just a bit, this is designed to be as quick as possible for your staff. And so I'm going to go in here and I'm going to choose a vendor, for instance, for this particular new contract. Let's just say it's Culligan, for instance. I've got a vendor ID number that could automatically be pulled from something like Great Plains or a CRM or a finance application of any sort. Really, the bottom line being any ODBC compliant data source, which includes Excel tables. So if you don't have an application that is compliant, maybe we can just export a list of your current vendors and save that as a nice little Excel table or even a SQL table on the side, push to that, and make it as if it was compatible with Laserfiche Workflow's direct queries. That's the type of thing that Cities Digital is known for. We'll just say this is an HVAC maintenance contract. And I could have a drop-down list of certain contract designations here like I do for document type, and that would simplify the process and eliminate the idea or possibility of misspellings. But in this case, we'll type that in. We'll say this one requires renewal each year. It doesn't automatically renew, and we'll just choose today. Now we've chosen a lot of information very simply, and in the world of e-forms in the consumer world, that doesn't seem very impressive. But for a lot of my city clients and financial institution clients and manufacturer clients, this was tremendous synchronization and designation here without needing to think about the renewal type too much, just being able to grab the document type, automatically syncing the general ledger code or vendor ID. This is all powerful connectivity that is one often overlooked as part of Laserfiche workflow design and provides for tremendous long-term synchronization between your documents and your other systems. We'll say this contract has a 1-year duration, and I'm logged in as an administrative user, so I won't see these. I can see through these 2 fields, but your users wouldn't. These 2 fields are going to be grayed out for your folks. And that's because Laserfiche automatically calculates them, so no need to confuse the user with having them as an optional selection. Of course, we can make all kinds of designations in terms of what type of group or department this contract belongs to. That helps in the routing and the ability to intake a contract from any location across the firm. Receiving, for instance, that has nothing to do with contracts. Makes a simple designation here, and now this contract owner and department is kept in the loop to their specificity and requirements. You'll also notice here that I have a number of fields here that would also be grayed out with information as to DocuSign. So if I needed to send this document out for signature, I can click a little button invoking the DocuSign integration in the Laserfiche window, or use those Cities Digital custom workflow activities for DocuSign, and that will send and interact and download the signed copy back to Laserfiche. We're not going to show DocuSign today, but that's a very popular component of contract management where you have outside signers. So I'm going to save that into Laserfiche now. We notice it goes straight into my Laserfiche repository, and there it is, sitting in my incoming docs folder. Now, if I had the starting rule set to automatically file this document, it'd be gone already. But in this case, we are actually going to use a business process shortcut button that I've placed here in the toolbar of Laserfiche, a convenient place for a number of shortcuts, including the DocuSign integration as well as a number of other business processes. and you can have a single button that shows all the ones available to you as well. A nifty item that is definitely overlooked for those who are moving or have moved to Laserfiche version 9 or especially 10, or we expect 11 next year. And so I'll go ahead and start this business process, and I have the confirmation messages appearing so that I know what's happening with this particular document. And now what we'll notice here is just by running a business process on this particular document, I was able to invoke that workflow. And of course, that's the user-driven element and allows me to show some of the neat new functionality, business processes in Laserfiche. And so very simply, but with tremendous purpose, of course, I just have the contract auto-filing here into the contract management folder. We'll notice I have a large list of vendors here, each with a different codification number or a vendor code, and there's mine, the one that I just filed. And we'll notice that it also has the designation and type of contract this was in this instance, as well as the date. And we'll see there's our automatically named and filed document. Now, one of the other neat little buttons that I put up in the ribbon bar is a button that views just the document metadata. And we are in a very interesting moment of transition as a business community in America right now, really globally, and that is we're starting to release our thinking about the individual document and think more about the data about that document. The whole Snowden incident, at least, brought about this new word called metadata. Now, this information not only facilitates integration and indexing and search, but it also facilitates kind of a quicker, straight-to-the-point review of information about this document. And it is also the container of our automatically calculated contract review date based off the expiration T-minus 3 months here. So Ryan on our team here at Cities Digital will get a nice little email. You saw an example of it on the slides that on September 15th, 2017, saying that the contract with Culligan for HVAC maintenance requires your renewal. It does not renew automatically. And of course, any invoking of DocuSign as well in that process. And so we can take a look at that without even opening the document. But of course, if we want to double-click and open that document, there's the document here in Microsoft Word, where we can interact with document versions, the metadata, of course, as well as check the document in and out. Take a look at the workflow we used here to design this just one more time. And you'll notice it's pretty simple. And we prefer putting together small, simple to quality check and error check and to support workflows that maybe invoke one another and connect to one another in that way. That's a very useful workflow design methodology that allows us to bring workflows on and offline and build them and quality check them for you without affecting other workflows or shutting down other processes or the workflow server itself. In this case, this is no exception. And then in this case, we retrieved field values. That's the Laserfiche E's for asking questions. There they are, and you recognize them. They were on that template, the contract template. As many as possible filled in by other automated sources and grayed out so that they're there for the user to see, but not there for the user to perhaps make a mistake on. We then moved that to the proper contract management vendor folder, used the information therein, the date, to calculate the contract expiration and review date. We assigned that information to those two template fields that our users didn't need to fill out, used that to properly name the document, and at the very end we sent an email out to Ryan in this case, and he will get that email on September 21st, 3 months before this contract is set to expire, and then maybe again 2 months, and then 1 month, and maybe once a week before that. So a simple but powerful way to address contract management, and the best way to expand a Laserfiche system, the best way to grow any type of system is content type by content type by content type. So really that's document type by document type in the Laserfiche world most of the time. So contract management this time. How do we approach contracts? What does Cities Digital and Laserfiche have to offer? And how can we, of course, twist this, this templatized, very prefab design to work the way we need it to?